I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm in a cheery mood because my bet on FanDuel from the last game, and I bet on the Patriots to win very confidently because I didn't believe in a California quarterback who plays in a dome. That bet hit, so I'm in a very good mood, Blake.
Tiger on Tiger crime to end the game. Kayshon Boutte, who's had a massive emergence over Derek Stingley Jr. Is there more of an indictment on a coach over the last 3 weeks than what Lane Kiffin has done at LSU from the portal? And then you have Kayshon Boutte, Derek Stingley, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Jaden Daniels going off, and along with Will Campbell winning his first ever playoff game. Is there more of an indictment on a head coach than what Brian Kelly is currently facing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more of an indictment that we need considering how things finished up when he was at LSU. This was always the concern with Brian Kelly, is that it never felt like he was doing the right things to prepare his team on a week-by-week basis. It is actually nuts the amount of talent that Brian Kelly had on those teams. Absolutely insane, which, we don't need to sit here and relitigate a firing that nobody was upset that it happened.
Yeah, I just, I had to get it out there while I could. But we have one more college football game. Joe and I will break down and give our picks for Indiana and Miami. I have a really good feeling I am going to make Joe very unhappy here tonight.
Probably.
So we will talk Indiana and Miami. We'll give our final thoughts and picks here. Darien Mensah, good heavens to Betsy. On his way to Miami, more than likely. Joe and I will tell you a little bit of a story about that when we get to that segment. As Joe and I should have just broke the news earlier that day, but, nevertheless, we did not. So we'll get to that as well. College football playoff more than likely not being expanded here, as ESPN's not going to extend the time frame. Looks like it's going to stay at 12 games. And we'll talk about the executive order with Navy and the Army football game, Joe. But for once, I do feel as if that for the college football playoff sake that we finally got a win in college football, this thing more than likely not expanding.
Yeah, I know that we're going to dig into that a little bit further. I think that just like the simple gut out of the immediate thought reaction is, thank God we're not just expanding to expand. I thought that Greg Sankey and the SEC's perspective on this, which they hold a lot of weight in the decision-making, I thought it was just really, really relieving that there was no more jockeying for power. And it was just, okay, well, we don't want to go to this ridiculous 24-team playoff bracket that you're pitching to us. So let's just stay where we are. I think that a lot of logic has prevailed in this circumstance because most of the comments that were reported on, Ross Dellinger has done a really good job of reporting on this. Basically, we're saying, let's just be patient. We've only done this for 2 years. The last playoff didn't expand until after 5 years. Who knows what happens in 5 years? But with the deadline coming up, it seems like this thing's not coming through. And I'm glad that we're not just doing stupid shit to do stupid shit.
We will discuss it, but I think Tony Petitti still needs to step down based off of everything that he's doing, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Everyone do us a favor, though, by hitting the like and share. Share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook, it's all those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Do us a favor. We are very close to getting to 30,000 subs. Do us a favor and hit that subscription button down below. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. We greatly appreciate you doing that as well. Joe, every show is brought to you by our good – I'm telling you. Joe and I are glad that every show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You got one more college football game left. Currently, as the Rams and the Bears play in the NFL playoff, you can place those live bets with our good friends over at FanDuel. But before the game happens tomorrow, and Joe and I will be live tomorrow night after this game, you can place that bet on Indiana or Miami with our good friends and partners over at FanDuel. For any thoughts, questions, concerns, go to FanDuel.com/RG for more details, and you can set your preferences there as well. If you're in the state of Missouri, you can also Place your bets with FanDuel as it is live in the great state of Missouri. All right, Joe, let's get rolling here. Indiana versus Miami. We finally are going to make our picks here. Joe, two teams that a lot of people have had a lot of questions on throughout the season, whether if Indiana could go all the way through with this, could they remain undefeated after Miami had a couple of slips and falls throughout the season and get in at the final bell and whistle into the college football playoff. They have won their way into a national title in their home stadium tomorrow night. When you play this game out in your mind the day before it happens, how do you think it's going to actually go down, and who are you going to pick to win?
Yeah, I'm picking Indiana win this game, Blake, but I really strongly believe that Miami is going to cover the 7.5-point spread over on FanDuel. I think this game is going to be close. I think that Miami is going to challenge Indiana. I even think that Miami could effectively position themselves to win, as we talked about in the preview. I think a lot of people are overlooking what Miami brings to the table. Is Indiana the more fundamentally sound team? Absolutely. Does that give them an opportunity and an advantage to create turnovers, to potentially slow down the Miami rushing attack, to do a lot of things that everybody that stood in Miami's way, a lot of those teams have not been able to accomplish? Yes, I think that is an ultimate decider why Indiana goes on to win. Not to mention the fact that in the first half, they get an advantage to be able to go up against an inexperienced corner and to do what they do best, which is attack those back shoulder jump balls when Xavier Lucas will not be in the game because of the targeting call. But the reason why, Blake, I think that this game is going to be tight is because of the fact that Miami has the edge along the lines of scrimmage. They have a first-round defensive lineman in Ruben Mayen. They have a first-round offensive lineman in Francis Maui-Noah. Just watched his tape. He looked freaking phenomenal. More people need to be talking about him as the best lineman in the upcoming draft, by the way. And the last part with this, Blake, I find it very hard to believe that Indiana wins this game by more than a touchdown because they're so slow and methodical. A team that moves the ball as slowly as they do does not get blown out. And Indiana isn't exactly Ole Miss in terms of the pace in which they move. This game does not feel like a blowout. It does not feel like a 10-plus point victory. Miami will hang into this game well into the fourth quarter.
Over the last 10 days, everyone has had the perception that this Indiana team, who could be the first team to ever go 16-0, is inevitable. They are on par to some, as we've gone through this last 10 days, as we've all seen, to the 2019 LSU team. They run it at a very effective level. They have the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. They got three really talented wide receivers and a really good tight end. Their offensive line, while undersized, has been able to run the football at will and get tremendous push. Their front seven, specifically their defensive line, is number one in the country and number one in the playoffs at not allowing rushing yards. They're number one in havoc rate. They're number one in pressure rate. They're number one in perfecting zone coverages. They're number one in pretty much every single statistical category. If not number one, they're in the top five. The perception is that Indiana Mendoza are going to be able to go into the hometown of Mario Cristobal and company in the U and be able to dominate because they're inevitable. However, I'm going with the U
to win.
To win.
Wow.
I think that when I look at this game, and I told you the last time that we spoke, I pretty much had talked myself into Miami winning this. Joe, they have the better and more physical offensive line. They have the more physical and dominating defensive line. And I think size and athleticism is actually finally going to come into play here. I think it's fine and dandy what Indiana's been doing. But I think I've seen a team in Miami that no one wants to give credit to that also might be inevitable. The way that they lean on teams, the way that I think that they're going to get after Fernando Mendoza, and you're right. Indiana might be able to take hold of Jabari Antoine out wide because Xavier Lucas must miss the first half. And that's something that they very well may do. But I think they're going to lean on Indiana. And I think that they're not going to play. And what does scare me is the last time that I saw them, they did not play their A-plus game. I still don't think that they've put it all together. But I think Miami is going to come out here and make a statement. I think that they're going to come out here and utilize both lines of scrimmage and do what the inevitable is. What does scare me, though, as I just mentioned, is the way that they played in the last game and couldn't put away Ole Miss. If you have some of the same mistakes that you had against Ole Miss, you will not win this game. You have to somewhat, I don't want to say you have to play perfectly, but you got to come damn close. But I also look at the size advantages and disadvantages for Indiana. And everybody wants to tell me, oh, Blake, it hadn't mattered all year. You haven't faced an offense or defensive line like this. So for that, I am going to lean on what I think is the more athletic team on the both lines of scrimmages and the more talented team on the both lines of scrimmages. What terrifies me as well, I don't know if Miami can hold down Becker, Cooper, Surratt. And if they come out hitting on all cylinders, Joe, I think they're either Miami's going to win and it'd be very close, or Indiana's going to come down there and put the rock bottom slap dab on them. I don't, because what Miami team's going to show up? But there's one simple thing Miami has got to do here. One, if they get to Fernando Mendoza and sack him 3 times, they're going to be national champions. Because I think that if you force him to make 35-plus throws in this game, you're going to win. I know Jabari Antoine's on the outside, and I get it. I am making Fernando Mendoza beat me with his arm. Because you got to take away something here, Joe. You got to. Are you going to take away? Are you going to just let him run all over you? Because
no, but sorry, no, go ahead, finish. I didn't mean to cut you off.
The only reason is the teams that did that were the closest to clipping them. The closest. And that, for me, I think Miami can perfect that more than Penn State could, than Ohio State could, and what Iowa could, because they're better up front. And, Joe, I've seen a Miami team that's hitting on all cylinders. That game was Ohio State. And we have a common opponent here. Now, last couple of days, I went back and watched this Miami offensive line. Brockemeyer is key in that interior. He is very key. The way that he played versus McDonald, I thought was flawless. So for that being said, I think the Miami Hurricanes, because of both lines of scrimmage, they're going to find a way to win this thing.
Okay, so I'm maintaining here that I agree with that premise, and that's why I'm saying that this is not a foregone conclusion that Indiana wins the game, even though that I'm picking Indiana. This is the best team that Indiana has faced that has an edge on both lines of scrimmage. Ohio State, they faced a similar quality defensive line in front seven as when they faced against Ohio State. But the difference here is that Miami also has the edge on their offensive line. Ohio State's offensive line was overrated. We saw that come to fruition. The minute that they actually played a good team that was aggressive, they completely crumbled. They collapsed. They couldn't run the football. I think that this is such a big mauling unit that they're going to be able to get pushed compared to what Ohio State did when they faced off with Indiana. I think that is generally a bad matchup for this Indiana team, and it's something that I think is often being overlooked. The one thing I disagree with the way that you framed it, though, I don't like the framing it as I'm daring Mendoza to beat me with his arm.
That's what I
said. Well, you said something along those lines, though. You said I'm making him.
Yeah, meaning I am not going to allow them to run the football at all on me.
Okay.
Because it's the only chance that I think that they have.
I don't disagree with that premise, because slowing down their run game is something that nobody has really been able to accomplish this year. And a lot of their offense flows through the fact that they have consistency running the football. I would be aggressive in filling the box, but I think that it is a gigantic, because this would imply that you'd have a lot of one-on-one coverage on the outside. You probably wouldn't have much safety help. You wouldn't have a lot of that. Setting up Surratt and Becker in one-on-one situations, I think, would be disastrous. And this is why I think that Indiana ultimately wins, is that, to your point, you have to figure out a way to slow down this offense. And the way that you're going to do that is by being really downhill and trying to keep everything short against the run. Mendoza has shown that when you challenge him, he steps up to those challenges. Has he made mistakes? Has he had turnovers? Has he taken sacks? Absolutely. Those things have come to fruition, and it has happened. But whenever he's needed to deliver a clutch throw, he has come up because he's got two receivers that he can trust in Surratt and in Becker, as well as Omar Cooper. At the end of the day, Blake, I think this comes down to it being a close game and Mendoza doing what we've seen all year long. There will be a third or a fourth quarter throw that he has that swings the momentum in favor of Indiana in order for them to win the game. But I just can't go all the way there. I understand that Carson Beck had the really fantastic drive that he did to beat Ole Miss. This is going to be a much more challenging defense that he is going to be facing. This is going to be a team that is going to be a lot deeper. It's going to be a lot more fundamentally sound. They're going to be a lot more consistent. That Ole Miss unit that they faced last week was one that Carson Beck was going to be able to find success against. And it was also a defense that he had faced. He has faced Pete Golding's defense before. There were a lot of advantages for Carson Beck to have played well in that game. If I had to, it's going to come down to which quarterback plays the best, and I have to pick the guy who just won the Heisman Trophy, who's about to be the first overall pick.
Well, let's not forget, I mean, the stat line isn't massive for him against Ohio State. But at the same time, I thought he played pretty flawless against Ohio State that also has a really freaking good defense. And I can make the argument that talent v. talent has just as much, if not more talent than what Indiana did. And, Joe, I'm going to tell you this too. Like the first time that they went up 7-0 in the second quarter was a 13-play drive that he orchestrated. And by the way, 3 of those third downs he ran for a first down. His legs in this playoffs has been phenomenal for him. So it's not as if that we have not seen Miami go up against a defense like this where they have just lined up and leaned on them and smacked that candy ass up and down the field. And I got to be real with you. Indiana has been flawless. They are the oldest team in college football by a mile. The experience factor for them matters. Do you know what takes away experience? When you go simple inside zone and you punch them in the mouth and go, here's your experience. Here's your experience. I'm going to bust you in the mouth and there's nothing you can do with it. It's like a Mike Tyson body shot. You can try to block it all you want to, but either your ribs are going to get broken or your forearm's going to get broken. You decide, because I'm lining up and I'm running right at that candy ass and I'm going to make you stop it. Ain't no 6 foot, 300-pound lineman going to stop me today. I got a 6'9", 340-pound left tackle and I'm going to lean on that ass. And let me tell you something now, bucko, they're going to go in there and they're going to lean on that ass. You better, hold on. You better go ahead and book that they're going to wipe that candy ass all up and down that field. And when it comes to Carson Beck, as Birdman says, you better put some respect on that name, because he is flawless in this playoffs. And all you do all day, Fernando Mendoza. And Carson Beck is going to run that trap, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay, so you're getting me like 90% of the way there. You're getting, because again, I'm 100% agreeing with you.
Right before you.
No, don't finish that statement. Please don't finish that statement, for the love of God. I'm like 90% there with you on what you're talking about here.
There too.
I completely am on the same page as you here. I have completely rejected anyone who believes that this game is going to be lopsided for everything that you're saying here. Miami's going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to pressure Fernando Mendoza. They're going to be able to get sacks. They're going to be able to keep the game tight because of the bodies that they have along both lines and the way that Mario Cristobal has coached and built this team. But Carson Beck, I don't look at the Ohio State game as your example that you used. I don't look at that game and go, Carson Beck won them that game. It was Mark Fletcher.
Is he going somewhere?
Wait, Indiana.
Is Mark Fletcher going somewhere?
No, but to your point, though, is I think that I got to be careful on how I want to phrase this. I think that Carson Beck has done really well and better than everybody has given him credit for during the last 2 games that has set them up to get to the national championship. 100% think that it has been relatively overly critical in evaluating him as a player, because he does just enough to keep his team on track. The thing is, that's all he needs to do. This is going to be in my eyes, the best defense that he has faced. And it is going to require him playing and not making any mistakes.
I just don't think.
I think that if I'm picking between these two quarterbacks, who is going to have the turnover that turns the tide and gives it to the other team, I have more evidence of Carson Beck doing that. I have less evidence of Fernando Mendoza doing that. And even in the instances that Fernando Mendoza has had turnovers or mistakes, he has rebounded at a ridiculous level. That is his best trait, is that he has the shortest memory of a quarterback that I've watched in some time.
Well, it's
Carson Beck on the opposite side. Wait. Carson Beck on the opposite side has done the complete opposite, where he's made a mistake, and sometimes that tends to compound.
Yeah, but he hasn't done that. Like this. He hasn't done that in 8 games where he's continued to compile mistakes. And
he was a bit inaccurate against Texas A&M, so he didn't have like a ton of turn. Like
the wind was blowing at 35 miles an hour. Everybody was inaccurate.
I understand that, and I'm not gonna break down the aerodynamics of. I get that. I understand that. You.
With that being said, let me get to let's just not even. Okay, let's get to this point. Would you agree to date, Ohio State was the best defense Indiana has faced?
Wait.
To date, do you think that Ohio State's the best defense that they've played?
Yes. That Indiana's played or Miami's played?
That Indiana has played. Well, both teams.
Yes.
Fernando Mendoza went 15 of 23 in that game. They also were not overly effective in running the football. Hemby nor Black had over 4.5 yards per carry. Can I finish?
That's still a good clip, though.
Neither one of them had over 4.5 yards per carry.
I remember that game. They ran the ball well against Ohio State.
Yeah, they had 110 yards. They also had well over 25 carries. What I'm saying is
the ball pretty well.
Okay. Joe,
sorry.
Yeah, you keep interrupting me.
Sorry.
You're being very rude.
Okay.
Very, very, very rude. Look at you being very rude. Okay.
I'm not being rude.
I got to be real with you. Here's the problem with that. They scored 13 points in that game. 13. With a corner room, which, by the way, from Ohio State, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Joe, their boundary corners kind of stunk. I mean, I hate to kind of say that. They were really bad in games that they really needed to be good in. Indiana and Miami, they stunk. They flat out, I'm sorry, they flat out stunk. You let Parker
Livingstone, extreme way of describing that.
Parker Livingstone, the best 3 teams that they had were getting mossed. They were getting mossed in the red zone. They're getting mossed. If you're letting Parker Livingstone do that to you, thinking
he's a good receiver.
Yeah. He ain't Malachi Tony.
Obviously.
So I'm just going to be blunt with you. They only scored 13 points against Ohio State, and Ohio State, quite honestly, shot themselves in the foot. I think that everybody looks at a depleted Oregon, a depleted Alabama, and sees the dominance and says they're inevitable.
I agree.
Which you can't deny that. However, the side of the bracket that you won was not as tough as what Miami just went through. It remotely is not close. And I just think that there's something to be said. If Ohio State can do what they did in Miami, for what it's worth, literally did what they did to them, I got to lean Miami because I just feel like that offense and defensive line is going to get to them. And I don't think that the baby giraffe, the way that Fernando Mendoza runs, I don't think he's going to be able to get away from it. He's very athletic in the pocket, and I will give you that. I've given you a lot of shit this year about him, kind of pushing back on him. But I will agree that I just think that they got to get to him and hit him. And when they start, I just feel that there's something in there that he will make a mistake, and they're going to make him pay.
Okay, but wait, here's where I'm having the pause because, again, I don't disagree with that part of it. And I also think that you bring up a good point where the way that Indiana is being judged comes a lot from the way that they played against two banged up teams in Oregon and Alabama. But as much as Mendoza is going to have a challenge trying to survive against that defensive line, and you're saying that he could make a mistake, I have a guy who's actually made mistakes and has struggled when he's been pressured.
He also has 700 more attempts than what Mendoza does. I mean,
he's got more experience. Does it automatically make him more qualified to play better in this game? I've got more context of Mendoza playing better throughout the season than Carson Beck does.
Okay, sounds good. But there's something that they have that Indiana does not: size and athleticism.
But the problem is, Blake, is that we've been saying that all the way through, and they've still found ways to win. I think that an example of a game that they did not have an athleticism or a size advantage was Ohio State, and they found a way to win that game. That game doesn't need to be a dominant victory.
You know who else did too and leaned on Ohio State and wept that ass a little bit more than Indiana did? Miami. If we're going to be a little bit blunt, Miami whipped up on that candy ass a little bit more than Indiana did.
We talk about all the time on this show that we don't make our assessments based on just purely off of common opponents and who they played. They both still won the game. They both still won the game.
Miami did it a little bit more because of their offensive line. That's where I'm going to lean.
That doesn't just automatically justify Miami, though. I don't think that.
I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. They're going to lean on that ass. People think Indiana is inevitable. Okay.
I don't think that they are. And I'm going to say this is the last thing. You have doubted Mendoza multiple times, and every single time
because
he has stepped up and played really well.
No, he doesn't. I'm sorry to tell you this. Going 15 of 26 with a touchdown and an interception is good play. You said he's been great. But
look at the individual plays that he's produced when they've needed him to.
No, listen.
Beck doesn't have that.
Joe, if I told you that Carson Beck did that same thing against Ohio State, you would say he played okay. By the way, hold on.
I'm not looking at the stat, though. I'm not looking at the stats.
Okay, and Carson Beck threw a touchdown to end a game versus Ohio State the same way that Fernando Mendoza did. And
not the same way. Not the same way.
He put the game away. Joe, hold on. He put the game away by a big-time throw. By a big-time throw, he put the game away.
If I'm comparing the types of throws.
Can I finish?
You didn't even let me finish. You keep cutting me off when I'm trying to bring up.
You literally just apologized for cutting me off.
Earlier I did, but I've been trying to make a point.
Basically, Carson Beck and Fernando Mendoza had the same games, and you let Fernando Mendoza slide on the interception that he had. But if Carson Beck would have did that, you would have ridiculed him on it now.
You disregarded what I said earlier, and I think that this is incredibly important. Fernando Mendoza has been vastly better at responding to mistakes than Carson Beck has. And I don't think that you could compare the clutch throws that Fernando Mendoza has had to the ones that Carson Beck has had. Carson Beck has done enough to keep his team in games and to move the offense forward. He makes a lot of solid plays to help his team.
Games. Who scored the winning touchdown versus Ole Miss?
Oh my God. But I am not on the same page with you that you think that the throws that Beck has had have been comparable to as difficult to what Mendoza has done.
Okay. I'm sorry to tell y'all this. I'm sorry to tell you. The catch by Cooper was a ridiculous catch.
You got to stop downplaying these unbelievable throws that the kid
had. Every single time.
He had to layer it.
Against Penn State and against Ohio State. He threw a critical interception, and both of those teams pulled out their tallywhackers and pissed down their pants when they could have won football games.
How can you say that when he delivered in the specific? He threw an interception and he responded. He bounced back. That's important.
Because Julian Sain couldn't get 1 inch on a QB sneak, and then they went for it on 4th down when they should have kicked a field goal, and they missed.
Was he playing in coverage on those plays? Those throws that Mendoza had?
No, but then you're coming in here saying, oh my God, the performances that Fernando Mendoza had versus Ohio State. Joe, they scored 13 points. And y'all want to compare this team to LSU in 2019?
I'm not doing that, so don't do that for me here.
I'm not doing that.
Get out of here. it's not as simple as just evaluating the stats that he had in the game. I'm evaluating the throws that he had to make.
No,
If this game
who
comes down to a final drive from Fernando Mendoza, I am picking Mendoza over Beck to score and to finish off the game.
You know
I'm
who
picking the guy who won the Heisman.
In playoff games? Matt Castle. Was he any good?
When did he have big-time throws in playoff games?
I don't know. The year that Tom Brady tore his ACL and they won the AFC East?
No, they...
Yes, they did.
Wait, no, but they got knocked out incredibly early in the playoffs. So I don't think that's not a good comparison.
Okay. Y'all keep saying this dude's playing great because he has a couple of really good throws. Playing great.
It's his job.
Hold on. Playing great. Great. When I think of great, I think of like what Vince Young did. I think of like what Burrow did. I think of like what Trevor Lawrence did. When I think of the word great, that's what I think about. When you say the word great and Fernando Mendoza going 15 of 26 with 1 touchdown and an interception, sorry, that's average to me.
Statistically, sure. When I'm calling upon a guy and he keeps delivering in important critical moments in games, that stuff deserves to be categorized as great. I didn't say he statistically had a great game.
But it's not a great game. Because you're making big throws to wide open receivers doesn't make it great. Y'all, hold on. This is the thing that I've hated the most.
Wide open receivers? What are you talking about? He's throwing in contested situations. Carson Beck's the one who's throwing to wide open receivers.
Really?
Significantly more open than what Mendoza's been throwing to? The throws that he's completing requires precision. Unbelievable precision.
Okay.
Just like the throw to Cooper that you keep discounting. One guy has had more wide open receivers than the other.
The guy had to go up the ladder to get it. And then he got a foot down.
All right, wait, we're talking in circles. We need to move on to the next
I'm just saying, if he would have did the same thing against Ohio State, y'all would have killed the man. Y'all would have killed the man.
Who did?
Carson Beck. If he would have had
I would not. But who? I am not they. I am my own self. I would have commended Carson Beck. I commended Carson Beck for the way that he has played and the way that he's performed.
Trent Dilfer.
Okay, that didn't come out of my mouth. All right. Let's get to Mensah.
Speaking of the University of Miami, Joe, can I just ask a simple question? Why has there not been more outrage on this Darien Mensah thing? Why? Because now Darien Mensah is going into the transfer portal and likely heading to Miami. The rumor is that Miami is going to pay out his contract and then give him money. Joe, with that being said, quick story. The night before this broke, I sent you a text, you and our producer Jack a text saying, "Hey guys, I'm hearing Mensah is going in the portal tomorrow." And Jack was like, "No, he's not." No, I'm like, "No, he's going to the portal." Joe, Miami missed out on Levin and some of these other quarterbacks, and they went in there and they got him, and they paid a ridiculous amount of money to go get him. My first real question here is, why isn't there a national outrage? Because if there were other teams and other coaches that did this, all hell would have broken loose. All hell would have broken loose. I guess that number one is my question, but what is your overall thoughts of this potentially happening?
So the national outrage doesn't happen because it's Duke. There's just not a gigantic fan base that's going to come storming in and get upset over this. This is why I have said that I found it really dumb, and I found it illogical that everybody was getting upset at Damon Williams. This is what we're comparing it to. It has nothing to do with Damon's character. It has nothing to do with him as a young man, as a player. It has nothing to do with that. This is something, we need examples of this to happen in the sport in order to create something that is better for the future of the sport. And what I'm referring to is the capability for a school to buy out a player, for athletes to sign multi-year deals, and if another school really wants him, to be able to come along and to buy out that player. Why this is important. Guys were just getting plucked left and right with no multi-year deals. They were just getting encouraged to enter the portal by said teams through tampering, and then those players would leave. The team that player was on before would be sitting there dumbfounded, and they'd be out of a player. You now have, and also potentially the money that they spent on the player, you now have a system that would reward teams for having really good prospects and developing them. $4 million, which is the amount that is rumored that Miami or whoever would go out and get him, would be expected to be paying. They'd be paying for the entire contract to then be able to go and get Darien Mensah, and then they would pay Darien Mensah a contract as well.
Those $4 million is what the rumor is.
Yeah. Those $4 million could go a long way in building a roster for a team like Duke. I think that this system, it has no parameters on it, but I think that this is something that actually helps the sport for the better. We need to stop acting like this is some sort of awful character in a kid. This has nothing to do with Darien Mensah and who he is as a young man. He got a better opportunity. Let him take the opportunity elsewhere. But financially, Duke should be able to recoup what they can, and they're going to. We need to stop freaking out over stuff like this, just regardless. That's how I've looked at the entire thing.
First and foremost, I think it's very hypocritical for what everybody was saying, to your point about DeMond Williams, and then this situation coming up with Darien Mensah, and everybody pointing the finger at multiple teams. By the way, I told you in the very beginning of this, not you, but just everybody, that Miami was also massively involved in DeMond Williams. Now they did the same thing to Darien Mensah. Same exact thing. They literally did the same exact thing that DeMond Williams situation. This is the same exact thing. The only problem is this one hit. This time it actually worked. Now, I agree, and I think you have a massive point here. Hey, man, you want to buy him out of the contract? Do it. I feel bad for Duke, and I feel bad for Manny Diaz, because who does he have to go get now? There is nobody. Nobody's left. So you go through this entire process here, and they're left with their, what's in their hands. I think from the national media perspective, it is complete and utter hypocrisy to write news article after news article, have take after take, say all these different things about the DeMond Williams incident, but nobody wants to talk about Darien Mensah. Well, Joe, you brought up, Blake, it's probably because it's just Duke. Well, Duke's in the same conference as Miami is. Jim Phillips, where are you at? Where is the ACC commissioner in this? You knew exactly what's going on. You knew exactly what happened, and you just put your hands up. Now, the Big Ten at least came to the defense of Washington when this was going on, even though Oregon was another team that was doing this as well. But I sit here, and by the way, Oregon did the same thing with Hassan Longstreet, and it blew up in their face. So with that being said, there's not an outcry for this. To be completely honest with you, this is bullshit. Because I see everybody wanting to talk about one central narrative, and that narrative being, oh, Steve Sarkisian's horrible. Oh, Lane Kiffin's horrible. Oh, Dan Lanning's horrible. But yet Miami does it to little old Duke, or what we've been saying from the very beginning, Matt Campbell completely runs down Iowa State. I keep hearing coaches care about programs, and they ran down Iowa State. Alex Golesh demolished South Florida. Demolished it. It's like he took a big crane to every building and blew that place up. We don't say anything. We don't say anything. South Florida and Iowa State got nothing in the mix. At least Duke gets something. Joe, I got to be real with you. We are just as much hypocritical in the media for not pointing it out, because it's not going to get us the clicks. In reference to him going to Miami, potentially, what a win. What a win. Because you're getting one of the best quarterbacks in the country. The last 2 years, Mensah has 6,700 passing yards and 56 touchdowns with 12 interceptions. This year, he threw for 4,000 yards and 34 touchdowns with the same amount of interceptions. This kid's going to be an outright stud. He is an outright stud. Potentially, I think is the biggest quarterback slept on in the entire country. If you want me to be a little honest with you, everybody for next year's draft keeps talking about Arch and Julian Sain and this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy and Dante Moore and all this guys. And I'm like, has anybody on planet Earth seen Darien Mensah play? Because that just keeps getting missed. What a massive win for Miami in that. But here's another thing. You're cheating. It's a form of cheating. Tampering, regardless of what you want to say, if you're going to say tampering is bad for all these other coaches that are doing it, Dan Lanning, Sark, Kiffin, you name the coach X that's doing it, you got to have the same amount of urgency for this. So if they're cheating, then so is this situation too. So, and I don't really want to hear it. I don't want to hear anybody's argument to that. Because really and truthfully, there is no argument. So if you're going to go out in the national media and constantly call it cheating, well, then you got to have the same take here too.
Okay, so this is my whole point why whenever the word tampering gets brought up by anybody, I immediately shut it down because I think that it's a constantly overused word. It happens in every single corner of the sport. If you think that your team, and this isn't specific to you, but I'm just saying in general, I know. If any fan of the show out there thinks their team doesn't tamper, you are incredibly naive. Yeah, you're just ignoring a lot of things. And again, like ridiculous levels of childish naivete if you think that your team has not tried to at least tamper or did tamper with whoever your favorite player is that they got in the transfer portal. To talk about Mensah, though, as a player and why him likely going to Miami, he has been linked to Miami. There has not really been any other schools that have been brought up with this. Miami has the most.
That I saw was Ole Miss by Chris Lowe in Tennessee, but Tennessee opted out.
Yeah, I don't think teams have the kind of money nor the desire to spend $4 million on just the buyout alone.
Right.
And by the way, there's no buyout actually with this, so they have to come to terms with Duke to an agreed upon amount. So there's a negotiation that's probably happening that we're not privy to. I will say this before I get to Mensah. You brought up where's Jim Phillips and all this. Phillips isn't going to say anything.
No, he's not.
The team that's making the conference all this money and is doing well and is in the national championship that you possibly lobbied to help get into the college football playoff, you're not going to go around and stab them.
Pause. Jim Phillips gave all of the ACC playoff money only to Miami. That's not supposed to happen. So again, he's not. It's his cash cow. Miami right now is his cash cow of his conference, and he needs them.
The politics that happen in conferences is not talked about enough, and it's quite disgusting. Darien Mensah, though, this is huge for Miami.
Yes.
This is an elevation from Beck, and this is to the same level of what happened when you brought in Cam Ward. Similar types of talents, not the same type of player, but a live arm. He was a kid who I remember watching him, Tulane versus Kansas State. I was watching that tape, and I paused. This was in the middle of his redshirt freshman season, I believe.
Yep.
And I texted somebody. I was like, have you watched this Mensah kid? This kid can sling it. He's got a lot of natural touch. He's got great delivery on deep balls. This is a guy who, with Tony and the rest of the receiving room, is going to be able to produce some big numbers and could be the key to you getting back to a national championship. It's similar to Cam Ward in the regard that he considered entering the draft, and the feedback that he got wasn't great. He could have possibly gone in the end of the first round, but it would have been more likely that he went somewhere on day 2 or later as a project. So him going back to school, he's got a chance to, is what you talked about here, to be in the mix for the first overall pick or at least a top 5 pick. I like Mensah a ton as a player. I love him. He's a great player.
Dude, he's a fantastic passer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just athletic enough to get away, and he doesn't panic. He doesn't want to leave the pocket unless he's absolutely forced to. He's as old school a player as you're going to find.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like the old school quarterback in, like you want your quarterback to be quarterback in. I mean, this kid can flat out sling it. And listen, it just adds a more massive dynamic to your game. And to be blunt with you, in a team that's going to lose the best offensive lineman in the country, I mean, I know that you're potentially trying to bring in Jordan Seaton here. Let's just see how that one completely unfolds. But you also have Jackson Cantwell that's coming in. You got a lot of big bodies. You got a lot of big-time offensive linemen that you really love there. So, I mean, there's no bigger winner in this than Malachi Toney, if we're just being completely blunt, maybe Darien Mensah. It makes Miami that much more dangerous and that much more better. And he is a Joe. To be blunt with you, what does he do that like the other quarterbacks in the country can't? That's the part. Is it just his size? Is it just that he's 6'1", 6'1", like 6'2", maybe? Is that the problem here? Because there's no better pure passer right now than him. Not really. Like, I mean, Joe, he's got 6,700 yards in 2 seasons, and he's thrown for 56 touchdowns. I mean, and it's not like he's making mistakes. I mean,
I think only 12 picks too, by the way, which is nuts.
12 picks,
which is crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, this year he was 34-6. I mean, that at Duke. Hey, general public, right now in the chat, name a receiver for Duke. We can. Name a receiver for Duke.
I don't think I could.
Okay. Thank you. That's my point. So
hey, that one white kid from the Ivy League, but I'm forgetting his name.
They did.
I forget his name.
It was
Harvard.
It was for Harvard, like ended in an I or something, or a vowel.
Maybe.
I believe. Anyway, bottom line, I think Jim Phillips is completely missing the boat here. He's not going to hurt his cash cow. But, Joe, I think it's just so hypocritical not to go after. You went after every other coach. Why aren't you doing it here? You blame Texas for Jordan Seaton, and he's not going there. Is that why? But they're the reason he got in the portal. So, I mean, it's just so hypocritical to me. Anyway, all right. Here's some good news. Finally some good news, something that you and I, for the first time tonight, going to actually agree on. Joe, it's being reported that the likely chance of the college football playoff expanding from 12 teams to 16 or from 12 teams to 24 is likely not going to happen. Chris Lowe and Ross Dellinger both reporting that is not likely going to happen. Now, it's not finalized yet. They have until next Friday. ESPN is stating that they're not going to give them an extension on that yet again. So either you're going to stick at 12 or you're going to go to 24 or maybe compromise at 16. The SEC wants to go to 16 teams. The Big Ten wants to go to 24. But at the current moment, as things stand, it seems like the college football playoff is going to stay at 12 teams.
Yeah, this is such a massive development. The big thing that comes from this that was reported on, Chris Lowe, Ross Dellinger have done a great job of reporting on this. The SEC would prefer to stick to 12 rather than going to 24, and that was with the sticking point. This ultimately came from the fact that the Big Ten, we talked about this last week, was trying to pitch a plan where they would go from 16 for a couple of years if they got everybody else to agree. If they went to 16, they would then make the jump to 24 at some time. That 24-team model was a disgusting monstrosity. There is, thankfully, no formal meeting that is on the deadline on the agenda with the deadline coming up in less than 5 days now. This is huge. I have said this 100 times over. I don't hate the premise of a 16-team playoff. I would 1,000,000 times % rather have, just as the SEC has made it clear, a 12-team playoff over a 24-team playoff. There is zero good reason to have a 24-team playoff. There is at least a decent argument for a 16-team playoff. We need to realize that there is a cutoff point, a complete cutoff point. You have said this multiple times, that the Big Ten needs to consider firing Tony Petitti, and I think that this is the best example of why it needs to happen. His cockamamie plan, ridiculous plan, screwed up expansion. I bet if you went around and asked all the Big Ten schools if they'd like to have a 16-team playoff and how they felt compared to the 24 team, most would probably say they would much rather have the 16-team playoff. He completely cooked this entire situation, and it's really disappointing that this ended up coming to fruition the way that it did.
To your point, he also misplayed his hand. Let me tell you how.
Yes.
He could have agreed to 16 teams saying, oh, you know what, Greg, you want 16? Sounds good. Let's go to 16. That deal's up in 40 years. It's up in 40 years. Well, you know what I'm going to do at 2.5? I think we should expand to 24. He misplayed his hand. But he's misplayed every single hand that he's had. You know, to me, Tony Petitti's at the bar, the guy who's talking to a 10 at the bar, and you're like, and he's your buddy, and you're like, oh man, he's about to reel her in. Here he goes. Then all of a sudden he does something stupid. Like he keeps picking his nose, or he keeps looking at his phone, or he keeps doing something stupid. Tony Petitti struck out with the 10, meaning he could have had what he really wanted. And what he really wants is more Big Ten teams in there. He could have, I don't think Greg completely wants to go away from the automatic qualifier, because I do think there's part of litigation in this. But he could have gotten more teams for more money into the playoff. He could have had it. Joe, by the way, just newsflash, you know why he wants to go to 24 too? Because if you go to 16, guess what conference has 2 more teams in there? It's not the Big Ten. It's not. It wouldn't have been the Big Ten last year. Would have been the SEC both times. So Greg's trying to get 2 final teams in here to give his conference more of a shot. But you look at this and say to yourself, the Big Ten has no legs to stand on here. 0. And for once, I'm glad Greg Sankey put his foot down. Somebody's got to put their foot down. We're not going to 24 teams. Do you know what that does to the regular season? Joe, this is the part I've been screaming from the rafters about. You dilute the regular season. You dilute it to the highest order. Joe, let me give you an example. If you would have kept it at 8, there's a chance that Texas beating A&M's out of the playoffs. Let me explain why. Yeah, they have a Florida loss, but they also have an Ohio State loss, which means they would have had 1 SEC loss that season. This season. You want to know why Greg wants to go to 16 teams, or 16-team playoff, by the way? Because he did something stupid. And he did something stupid when he knew that he was never going to agree to 24 teams. He went to a 9 conference game schedule for his league. Why would you do that? Why? Because ESPN promised you something? Well, look what they did. They didn't do that. They did not do that. I look, man, we've argued about this. For once, it's good that Greg Sankey just said no. At least somebody did. Because I get the whole situation. Here's what you should do. Say, listen, everybody, the 12 best teams that can get in, get in. How do you fight litigation? That's the part I don't understand on this, Joe. Everybody's on the same equal playing field. Best 12 teams get in. Best 12. Why can't we just do that? Best 16. They need to focus on more about changing the playoffs as it currently is than expanding. Their thing is they see issues and they're like, okay, well, let's expand. They're killing it. They're killing the Joe. How many times do you get in the regular season and be like, man, it's a high anticipation playoff game. You keep expanding that to 24 games, it's not going to matter. 24 teams, excuse me, not games. It's not going to matter. It just won't. So, you know what? Me and you should volley for the 24-team playoff, because we will make a lot more money. You know what? Screw it. Let's go Big Ten and Tony Petitti.
I want to watch a good product. I really don't have any desire to – I don't want to cover – that's the thing, though, is like as much as there'd be more games, I don't want to cover an expanded bracket when a lot of the games are –
I saw this today. Guess who BYU would have played?
Guess who in the 2014 playoff?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Miami or Notre Dame, depending on it. So you mean a team in Oregon who just ran down Texas Tech, ran them down and walked them down. The team that Texas Tech did that to, the team that's playing in the national championship this week, like tomorrow, in Miami, what would they have done? What would they have done? And you keep talking to me about product? Joe,
Yeah.
Texas Tech got walked down in these playoffs. Walked down. And so now you want to expand it. How do you get there? 3 teams, well, I guess you could say Oregon too, to an extent. But Oregon walks down Texas Tech. Oregon gets walked down by Indiana. We don't need more teams. Here's the truth. We need less. We need less. Joe, some of these teams are getting smoked. Hold on. See, the teams on the left side of the bracket, all of them got smoked. At some point, all of them got smoked. Whether it's James Madison, whether it's Oregon, whether it's Texas Tech or Alabama, they all got smoked. I mean, for the love of God, and you want to expand it?
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing here is that there was sensibility that comes from this. And one of the sentiments that was from one of the chairman or committee members was that we have only had this for 2 years. I don't know how it is plausible to have an evaluation on if a 16-team or 24-team playoff would make sense when this has only happened for 2 years. At the end of the day, even if we maybe come to a conclusion, I mean, as much as what you just said was true, we just don't have enough evidence to make a conclusion on if the 12-team playoff was good or bad. There is not nearly enough context for us to be able to make that decision after just 2 years of doing it. We need a larger sample size and be able to look at, okay, this is what's working, this is what's not working. As much as we call for changes to happen every single year, gut reaction changes sometimes can be for the worse. It can be bad for the product that is out there. We need to be much more patient with how this thing ends up playing out. Just to bring up the Army-Navy thing that Trump on social said that, he intends to essentially sign an executive order that would prevent other games from airing around the same time as the Army-Navy game on that one weekend in December. The reason why that's important, not for 2026, but for the near future, is that in at least a 16-team playoff field, the play-in games or the games that could happen would happen on that same weekend. I don't think, by the way, that premise is a bad idea, because I do think that the Army-Navy game does a lot of great things for just promoting the military, patriotism, all of those things. I know plenty of people that applied to the service academies because they really were attracted to the representation of both of those service academies. So that game being a standstill game that's not competing with an entry round college football playoff game is definitely for the better of the sport. And it's one thing that I think not enough people have talked about as a looming issue with playoff expansion.
They'll just push the season back a week.
Which I don't want that to happen either. I don't want to move the season back.
What else?
Play it around that game. It's not hard.
Yeah,
play it before and play it after.
You do it for the NFL already. You literally do it for the NFL now. So what why couldn't you do it for them? Yeah, I mean, I love the Army-Navy game. I think you put it in a really good light in reference to, look, to keep the politics out of this. I kind of agree. I don't want any game being played during that. I think it's a part of Americana.
Culture.
Yeah, right. It's a part of Americana. I don't think that you should take that away, and I think it's the right thing to do based off of what those young men give up for their lives. Like I always bring up this Paul Skeens thing. Joe, that dude was flying fighter jets before throwing 102 miles an hour. Like, just was flying F-22 planes at 6'7", like at Mach 10 or whatever the shit they go. I don't know what they go. Okay. And so I'm like, for this game, yes, we should all pause. Sometimes it's okay for the country to just take a timeout, literally and kind of pun intended here, to everybody to focus in on that. And so I don't mind that part. It's just going back to this playoffs, man. I don't understand it. I really don't. I mean, outside of money, and we keep bitching about this, but man, I don't know where we're going. I don't know where we're going. Where are we going here? There's no true direction. So until we get some, I mean, Tony Petitti, quite frankly, if I'm just being blunt with you, name the things that have changed the sport, Joe. Let's name a couple of things that have happened over the last 2 years. Has or has not Tony Petitti been a part of at least 95% of it? He has been, name something. Name something that has gone on that has been massive. Scheduling and pushing the calendar back. He was the one who said that Ryan, went to the podium and said, well, Ryan Day thinks we should do it then so we can have guys in for spring football. The calendar is completely screwed. It's completely screwed. And he was a big voice in that. The expansion. I mean, name and look at all the things that have happened. They 95% revolve around his ass. I mean, name one that hadn't. I mean, I know we bring up Sankey, but Sankey's the opposite part of that. He's the yin to the yang, right? I mean, he's the opposite side of saying, we're not doing that. And to be blunt with you, the Big Ten kept taking shots at him all the time that they moved to a 9-game conference schedule because of it. Look what they did. Look what they did. By the way, 13 out of 16 SEC teams, Joe, 13 of the 16 were top 15 in strength of schedule. You dummy. Why would you do that? So that's why I get so aggravated by people saying, oh, Blake's just an SEC guy when it comes to Tony Petitti in the Big Ten. No, I've said here, Joe, how long have we been doing this? Since 2022, right?
3 years.
Okay. So since 2022, we come out here every day when people take an offseason of football, and me and you sit here and argue. And every single time during the offseason, we walk our happy asses off in here and guess what this crazy son of a bitch did now? Look at what he did now. And so that's the part where I'm like, listen, it's not a conference thing. It's not. I have been more vocal and critical of Greg Sankey than anybody. I can show you multiple million-viewed videos with me and Chris Phillips or me on AYS, literally me screaming about how bad of a job he's doing. This is not a conference thing. It's a Joe, I'm tired of yelling about Tony Petitti thing. It's getting old. And I love yelling and arguing. But even to me, this is getting old. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope he quits. I
don't think that's happening. He's getting paid a lot of money. I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
No, it's not. I'm going to let you read this one.
Zero chance this ND homer could be objective, still crying himself to sleep because Miami got in and over his team. Have you, listened to this show? Seriously. Legitimately, don't put words in my mouth. You have not listened to a word. If you have listened to this show, you have zero critical thinking skills and media literacy. You have an incapability to listen to it. Did you even listen to the segment? Everyone out there has doubted Miami. I was in on Miami before anybody else was. Holy shit. I've been considered to be one of the most, I've been considered to be one of the most objective Notre Dame fans when talking about Miami.
Fair. Very fair.
I don't let Notre Dame impact my decision-making and how I talk about
you're
things.
right.
I have never done that. So shut up. Thanks for the $10.
No, you're right on that. You don't do that part of it. I will say this. To your defense, it's just so wild. Picking Indiana is some wild ass pick. He's picking against Miami because he's a Notre Dame fan.
I said the game was going to be close. Nobody is saying. Everyone who's picking Indiana says it's going to be a blowout. Holy shit.
Correct.
Dude, you knew I was going to get pissed off. That's why. Thanks for the $10.
Shaquan says, haven't heard what y'all said. Got to go back and but I got Miami on paper, Indiana 100%, but I feel like Miami has been doubted every game, and all they do is stick to who they are, run and lean on them. Love the show. Love you too, buddy. Shaquan's
thanks, Shaquan.
Yeah. People are doubting them. People are doubting them. People are going to doubt them. you picked Indiana. I just really think that there's something to be said about those lines of scrimmage. I really do.
It's important. The one thing that I've brought up whenever I've gotten asked about this from a betting perspective, go look at the lines that have been put out there for Miami's games. When they haven't been favored and it's been a while, they cover. The books are really bad at setting lines, and most importantly, the public is really bad at betting against Miami. This line moved. It came back down a little bit, but the doubt that they have against them, I think, is a reason to buy into this game being close. That's my biggest part about this is I think everybody's got it wrong.
On paper, they have it wrong.
Yeah.
Meaning like everybody just thinks that they can bully Miami up front. Joe, let me tell you what's not going to happen. This is just what's not. They're not bullying Miami. That they might throw it all over the place on their ass. They're not going to bully them. That ain't happening. So y'all can get that out of your mind right now.
No.
He says, "Can you time out spammers?" Please?
Yeah, there were a couple people I put them in timeout.
I had to block one guy the other day. I mean, he was just flashing out. Anyway, so all right. Joe and I will be live immediately following the national championship, which is tomorrow. I can't believe this season's over.
I know. It's surreal. It's going to be weird that on Tuesday we're going to have to
I might go golf now. I don't really know what to do with myself.
There's plenty of football still to talk about.
There is. See y'all soon. Peace.